This is Daniel Poppy, host of How to Write Good. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hey, it's Baxter Colburn here from Public House Media. Did you know that we just added a store here at Public House Media? No, I'm not talking about a grocery store where you can go buy apples or bananas or peanut butter, which are all fantastic, especially when peanut butter's on all of those. Anyway, we've added a store here at Public House Media so you can not only come and represent your favorite podcast network, but also represent your favorite shows as well, too. Just go over to thepHmedia.com and look in the top right corner where you'll see the button that says Store. Click on that and you can search through all of our great products. Or if you go to our Facebook page, Public House Media, you can see on the left-hand side a tab that says Store. All of our products are listed there as well too. It's the new Public House Media store. You don't want to miss it. It is fantastic. Buy some of that great swag to support your favorite shows and to support Public House Media. Check it out today.
This is Katie, co-host of Coffee with Keith and Katie here on Public House Media. Once you are done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Coffee with Keith and Katie, where we talk about the adventures of our daily lives and relationship. A new show comes out every Tuesday and Friday at 8:30 p.m. Central. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Coffee with Keith and Katie. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
The latest headlines.
If they go out and wipe the floor with the Texans, I might buy in.
The insightful interviews.
Whitney McIntosh, SB Nation.
I was more impressed with Giancarlo, especially when you consider Aaron Judge's all-star squad.
The hottest takes.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley had a great game against Iowa, but he hasn't done much.
Can all be found on Press Row. Here's your host.
It's clearly time for a change, it's only a matter of time before it happens.
Christian Heimall.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back on Press Row. Christian Heimall here with you on this Thursday, April 19th, 2018. So glad to have you along on the ride with us here as we break down the hottest topics in sports with the experts, writers, and analysts who cover them. Up on today's show, Eric Edholm, Pro Football Weekly. He will tell us where Dez Bryant could realistically end up after the Cowboys unceremoniously cut him last week, as well as a quick preview of next week's NFL draft. And then, of course, the big story out yesterday, Tom Brady hasn't committed to playing in 2018, which I wasn't aware was something that he did. But we'll discuss with Eric if that's a cause for concern in New England. We'll also talk NBA playoffs and with Keith Irizarry of Calling the Shots with Keith Irizarry on NBC Sports Radio. We'll talk with him about that. Biggest surprise he sees in the first round, and if there's really reason to be freaking out if you're a Cleveland Cavaliers fan or if you're a New York Knicks fan, considering they might be hiring Mike Woodson again as their head coach. So who knows? But a lot to get to here on today's show. Of course, we're going to get to your listener questions as well. Want to start off in the NHL, where something amazing happened on Wednesday night. If you didn't get a chance to see it, the Vegas Golden Knights, with a 1-0 win over Los Angeles in Game 4, they sweep the Kings and move on into the second round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. This expansion team just continues to get more and more exciting, better as the season goes on. I mean, and I understand, listen, I know they changed the rules of the expansion draft, which made it easier for Vegas to be competitive this year. But it's one thing to be competitive in your first season with absolutely just one training camp to get camaraderie, to get used to everything. It's another thing to actually do what they've done. 50-plus wins, the most by any expansion team ever, a division title, and now a sweep in the first round of the playoffs is unbelievable. So if you're not following the Vegas Knights, you really need to be. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury has found his old self again, which is amazing to think of, that this guy, who the Pittsburgh Penguins were more than okay to let go, this year he's got a save percentage of .927. I mean, it's better. He's having one of the best seasons of his career. William Karlsson is a Hart Trophy candidate, in my opinion. Derek Engelland is so talented and a leader of that squad. It's amazing. And if you're not following Vegas, you really need to be. The city has embraced them. A desert has embraced a hockey team, folks. Just think about that, number one. And then when you think about the Route 91 Harvest Festival and the shooting that happened just a couple of days prior to really a couple of weeks prior to the home opener for them. I mean, it's incredible when you think about all the things that have happened in Las Vegas. For this team to be as supported as they are is amazing. And for them to go on a sweep here, when you look at Game 3 as well, where they were down 1-0 in the third period and they scored 3 goals to win Game 3 in L.A. I mean, it's amazing what this team does, and they're so much fun to watch. And I'm pulling for them the rest of the way. Outside of my New Jersey Devils, I'm really pulling for this Vegas squad. I love watching them. It's a lot of fun. Elsewhere, I mean, you look at Washington on Tuesday night. Washington, the Capitals, have started the trek back, down 0-2 for the 4th time in Alex Ovechkin's career, winning a huge double overtime game against Columbus in Game 3. That was on the road, too, which is huge for them. So to be able to get that victory is, of course, big, with Lars Eller coming up with that one. And then you look at the other matchup coming up tonight, of course, the Boston Bruins and the Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs, they were a team that a lot of folks, even myself, kind of expected to be an upset pick in the first round. But Boston, in the 2 games that they have won, Boston's kind of handled things pretty well. So, I mean, other than that, you can't really expect too much from these playoffs. Like I said, the best story in sports is Vegas. And if you're not watching them, I don't know what you're doing. But, of course, the question is going to be, can Pittsburgh be a 3-time champ? Did Boston do enough at the trade deadline? Is Tampa Bay unstoppable? Is Nashville kind of a silent underdog in the West, even though they're the top team in the West? But this is a fun. NHL playoffs are great. It's a lot of fun to watch. And if you're not watching Vegas, I don't know what you are doing. I really don't. It's a lot of fun. They're a great team, and they're a great story, and I'm really, really, really excited about that. You're on Press Row. I'm Christian Heimall. We're here. Happy to be part of the Public House Media Network. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, share us with your friends and family. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, Stitcher.com, and, of course, you can check us out on thephmedia.com. Go to our store, thephmedia.com. Get some Press Row swag. Help out the show here. Everything that you buy helps this show continue to grow and be one of the fastest growing sports podcasts in the country, and we certainly appreciate your guys' support in doing that. So you can get a t-shirt, you can get a snapback, you can get iPhone covers, Samsung phone covers, coffee mugs, all that fun stuff. It's on thephmedia.com. You can also, of course, get in touch with the show on social media. Press Row by Public House Media on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. Or you can email us, pressrowphm@gmail.com. You can also check me out on Twitter at Chris Heimall, ChrisHeimall. Really looking forward to today's show. Again, mentioned Eric Edholm, Pro Football Weekly. We'll talk with him about what the Browns can do at number 1 and 4. What will the New York Giants do at number 2? And the interesting possibility of a 3-team trade in the first round that may include the Buffalo Bills. We'll get into that with him as well. But there's a lot of talk, of course, going on today and yesterday about Tom Brady and whether or not he will play in 2018. This all started Wednesday morning when Adam Schefter of ESPN tweeted out, let's see if we can find the exact tweet. Tom Brady has, let me see here, I got to find it again. Tom Brady has not said has not committed to playing in 2018, even though people who know him believe he will be back for the coming season, league sources told ESPN. Two things here. Number one, I was unaware that Tom Brady usually told the Patriots when he was going to play or if he was going to end up playing for the following season. I wasn't aware that was something that he did. But two, this tweet kind of doesn't really say anything from Adam Schefter. I mean, it doesn't really, he can go one of two ways. I mean, let's see. The first part of this, Patriots quarterback Tom Brady still has not committed to playing in 2018. So if he retires, he can kind of say, yeah, we knew about this a couple of weeks ago. Second part, even though people who know him believe he will be back for the coming season, then he can say, yeah, I told you he would be back for this season. Look, I don't think anybody needs to really be concerned, and we'll ask Eric about this here in just a little bit. I don't think anybody needs to be concerned about Brady playing in 2018. Rob Gronkowski, who, by the way, put up on Instagram a picture of him in a pool with his girlfriend in Texas this week, that maybe you need to be a little bit concerned about because he is a first-ballot Hall of Fame tight end, if not the greatest tight end of all time. Brady is the greatest football player of all time, greatest quarterback. There is no even close comparison. Please do not try. But he said he wants to play until 45. The loss in the Super Bowl last year and Brady's competitiveness, we know unequivocally that he does not want to end his career that way. If you're a Patriots fan, I would not be concerned. That being said, the draft moves that the Patriots have made trading up a little bit here to get into the first round already should have you nervous for the next couple of years because this feels to me like the Patriots are going to draft Tom Brady's heir apparent in this draft next week, next Thursday, down in Dallas. We'll find out about that if it actually happens in the first round, but Jimmy Garoppolo was supposed to be the heir. They traded him. Things change. So who knows exactly how this is all going to work out. But believe you me, I would not be surprised at all, if Tom Brady's replacement is drafted here in 2018. That being said, Tom Brady will play this year. You should not be concerned. Don't worry about it at all if you're a Patriots fan. You should have more concern about Rob Gronkowski and if he is going to return. The Patriots also letting their two top offensive linemen doesn't help in this cause. That might be a cause for concern if you're Tom Brady about coming back. Am I going to be protected enough injury-wise to be able to make this happen? Nate Solder signing with the Giants, and then over the weekend, Cameron Fleming signing with the Cowboys. So I still don't believe for a moment that Tom Brady will not be the Patriots starting quarterback come week 1. We'll ask Eric Edholm of that when we return. Pro Football Weekly, he will join us in just a little bit here on Press Row.
Want to be part of the show? Go to Facebook and search Press Row Podcast-Public House Media, or find us on Twitter and Instagram at Press Row PHM. You can also email the program, pressrowphm@gmail.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimall, a Public House Media podcast.
Back on Press Row, Christian Heimall here with you, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, share us with your friends and family. Leave us a nice little 5-star review there on Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, Apple Podcasts. Of course, you can always find us on thepHmedia.com. Check out our store there. Get some Press Row swag as well. NFL Draft in just 1 week as all eyes will descend on Dallas and Jerry World. Eric Edholm, Pro Football Weekly, joins us here on the program. Eric, we'll start in Dallas. Last week, the Cowboys decided to part ways with Dez Bryant, and the timing of it, pretty unfortunate for Bryant because it feels as though every team that needed a wide receiver heading into free agency or even the draft already ended up getting one.
It's hard for me to say it felt personal, but it was strange. You know, it makes you question the timing of it. So obviously there was some kind of internal discussion after the first and second waves of free agency, and you know, the Cowboys decided, okay, now is the right time. We're 2 weeks out from the draft. You know, you had heard the rumblings about this being a real possibility. Everyone knew it was within you know, the realm of things, and they had been doing a lot of work on the draft's wide receivers. So it all kind of added up. But again, like you said, the timing is a little odd. I will say this. I don't think it's considered a great draft for wide receivers. I think it's considered deep, but a lot of number 2 and number 3 guys further on. So I still think there's a good shot that Bryant will land in an okay place.
Speaking of that, I mean, all the places that he could land, I know he said he wants to stay in the NFC East, and we heard rumblings about him and Odell Beckham. The pairing would be crazy, his words there. But for some reason, and you can tell me if I'm completely off base on this just smells like New England to me for some reason.
Yeah, you know, I will say this. The Patriots did a lot of work on Bryant when he came out for the draft. I forget what year it was, 2009 or 2010, whatever year that was. And liked him a lot as a player. You know, had some concerns about, you know, personality and things like that, and whether he'd be a good fit in New England. And, you know, a lot has happened since then. And Dez is a really interesting guy. I think at this point in his career, especially in a one-year type of deal, I think he would be perfectly fine wherever he landed. I don't think you could put him in a situation and assume that he's going to be a disruption or a distraction or some kind of coach killer or anything like that. I think that would be taking it way too far. Could New England be a possibility? Yes. Is their wide receiver depth chart in decent shape now? Yeah. I mean, they just signed Jordan Matthews, and I know that's not a player that you would say is on Dez Bryant's level, but he would kind of fill that role, I think, a little bit. I mean, he's got the size, and coming off an injury, could be one of those rebound players. Could I see it? Possibly. I will say this: if the Patriots have any intentions of trading Rob Gronkowski, they probably will need another pass catcher. It's not a even swap, but I'm just saying that could preclude that, that possibility, I would say.
Well, Jerry gets his name out there, obviously, with releasing Dez Bryant, and then gets everybody in his building next week for the draft. What's the strangest rumor that you've heard so far heading into next week's NFL draft?
There's been some talk about a three-way trade up at the top, and I'm sure they've at least discussed the possibility of it. And that's what teams do right now. You have teams calling teams, hey, in case, we get to Thursday night, we're sitting at pick number 25. I'm just pulling these numbers out of my hat. You're at number 15. How much would it cost to get up there? They have these preliminary discussions. So when you hear reports about, there's wild trade discussion, granted, a lot of that is happening. Do I think there's going to be some real movement on Thursday night? Yes, I do. And I think it could start at the top. Again, I don't know what the Browns' plans are exactly. I don't know what the Giants plan to do at number 2. I do know the Bills have discussed a lot of possible landing spots in the top 5. They've probably talked to almost every team except the Jets about moving up. So I will say that something involving the Bills, the Jets, the Giants, not the Giants, not the Jets, Bills, Giants, Browns, possibly Broncos at 5. If things start sliding, maybe the Bears at 8 are a trade down candidate. There are a lot of teams in the top 10 that have discussed these things. So Gronkowski getting traded would be, you could file that under crazy. You could put that in the crazy category because, there's still a belief that he could still have 1 or 2 or 3 more good years at a Gronk level, which is above every other tight end.
We're speaking with Eric Edholm, Pro Football Weekly here. You mentioned Rob Gronkowski there. He and Tom Brady not at the start of the Patriots offseason workout program. Neither one has reportedly committed to playing this year. Should there be any concern in New England?
Well, I will say this. I don't think for Brady there really is. Brady has stayed away for the start of OTAs, I think, 3 or 4 times in the past. Typically he's there, but he was in Qatar over the weekend, and on a trip there. And so, when you reach this status, you're able to go to Bill Belichick and say, here are my plans this offseason. Yeah. But in the case of Gronk, I think Belichick's got to really sit there and weigh, hey, they've always had the philosophy of trading a guy a year early is better than trading him a year late. Value's higher. Maybe you've lost the player. Maybe we've gotten to the point of no return. We're not prepared to pay him again, that sort of thing. That would be far less shocking, obviously, to have Gronk retire or to have them trade him than Brady not being there. I'll say that.
As we look at this draft, there have been so much talk about this quarterback class, 2004, 1983. Which of these quarterbacks do you really see as the most surefire starter come the fall of 2018?
Yeah, and I think 2 or 3 could end up starting early on. To me, it's nowhere close to that. In fact, if anything, it might be closer to the 1999 class, which Dante Culpepper ended up being the best of that group, and there were Caden Downs, and Tim Couch would have been a good player. I don't care what anyone says. He was on his way to getting good. He was just injured a lot. That was really what set him back, and he was a good player. I know Browns fans like to dump on him, but so, yeah, there's elements of that. I think it's closer to that where you had 5 QBs going, the first 14 picks than it is to 2004 to 2000, to 1983. So to answer your question, I really like, they're 2 different guys, but I like Josh Rosen and Baker Mayfield the most. I think Sam Darnold is a tick behind them. And then I have questions, but also like the potential of both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. I think both can be very good. If I had to bet on one, I'd bet on Jackson. If you watch enough Josh Allen, you get concerned about what you see because there's some fundamental stuff that he needs really good breakdown on with his NFL team.
I'm going to be a little self-serving here with this one. I grew up
Sure.
a New York Giants fan, and at number 2, I know everybody keeps talking about drafting Eli's replacement. Personally, I've been on the bandwagon of it's a year too early to do that. At number 2, if Saquon Barkley is there, or even if they can find a trade down partner within the top 10 to get Quentin Nelson at a better deal, how much are the Giants realistically looking at a quarterback?
It's a great question. They've done a good job of keeping things quiet, and to me, I mean, if you have the shot of drafting a potential franchise quarterback, you believe in one of those guys, whether it's Sam Darnold or whoever, you take him. And I'm not worried about a year early, but I happen to think, and this is my own kind of dot connecting here, I think the Giants really like a couple of players lower down. I think they love Nelson. I think they think, Bradley Chubb is a good player. Mm-hmm. The guy to file away, if they do move down, Marcus Davenport from UTSA, to me, he screams Dave Gettleman defensive end. I mean, I just think that fits the mold of what he seeks, and I think he's got some OCU manure in him. I mean, that's the player who I've comped him to. That's what I see when I watch him. Year 1, it's going to be a mixed bag. It's going to be some good, some bad. Year 2, you could see something really special. Just give him time. So I don't know what their plans are. I just recently mocked them Saquon Barkley. We saw Gettleman use the nice pick on Christian McCaffrey. I would think he'd be fine with using number 2 on Barkley if that's the way it ended up. But, you passed on a quarterback, next year's class, Jay Patterson, Drew Lock. I don't know. I mean, it's not nearly as sexy a group, and I don't think the Giants feel like they'll be in the position to draft any of those guys.
Right. We're speaking with Eric Edholm of Pro Football Weekly here. The Browns at number 1. I mean, they just signed. I know he's not a game changer, but Drew Stanton. They just signed him to be a backup over the weekend. With Tyrod Taylor making that trade, they have the number 4 pick as well. After Myles Garrett turned out to be a pretty solid pick last year, but I'm just going to ask this because I feel like we have to. How do the Browns screw this up, having number 1 and number 4?
I'm not falling into your trap there. No, hey, it's easy pickings. Believe me, I get it. It's low hanging fruit, and and I understand why people ask that way because there is that feeling of, boy, if they take Josh Allen, are they really screwing this thing up? And don't get me wrong, if you put 50 of the best Allen plays up on the screen, it'll blow your hair back. I mean, he can sling the ball, and he throws into tight windows. And there are times when he steps up in the pocket. There are too many times when he gets small when the pressure comes on, especially right up in his face. There are too many times when he gives up easy yards. The slant is there for the taking on 3rd and 6, and he wants to hit the home run, and he overthrows the ball. There's some footwork issues. There's some accuracy issues. There's some issues with fundamentally reading defenses. I had a couple of teams talk to him and say his board work was just okay, But then again, Cam Newton's board work was just okay. I think Cam's turned out all right. Yeah. You have a creative offensive coordinator, maybe you can get the best out of Josh Allen. Cam shocked everybody when he came in the league, even as a number 1 pick. Now, what do they do at 4? Do they trade down? Do they take Quentin Nelson? Do they take Bradley Chubb and pair him with Garrett? I suspect trade down is their first choice. I think they want to move down a little bit and then take, let's say Minka Fitzpatrick and put him at corner. I think that's a actionable plan for them. I don't know. It's so fascinating, though. To me, it's like the number 4 pick is almost the more climactic pick than number 1 because, I mean, it's starting to feel like it's a quarterback, and whatever they do, he's not going to be ready year 1.
When you do your mock drafts or when you talk to people, how much do you feel like you're being told the 100% truth as to what's actually being discussed in these front offices?
It depends on who you talk to. I mean, there are people, I've been doing this a little while, and I started in 99. I started covering NFL full-time in 02. And so I've built up some relationships with people who, before I make that call or text or whatever, I think to myself, have they led me astray in the past? And if so, what was it? And was it something that, And for the most part, you build up relationships to where you trust people, and you can sort of build in safeguards like, hey, I'm not writing this today. This is never going to get connected to you. You know, here's you trade information. So,
Right.
Yeah, can there be some smoke screens out there? Yes. I also have to pick and choose what I ask very carefully. So doing that, I feel confident in about 85 or 90% of what I hear. Agents are always going to sort of spin their clients' favor, you know, that sort of thing. But teams, I think, as long as you feel good about who you're calling and you build up those relationships, there's not as much bunk out there as everybody likes to make it sound like.
Last thing I'm going to ask you here, ignoring what teams need, ignoring what it feels like, who should be the number one overall pick next week?
I mean, I'm going to go against the grain here. I'm going to say Quentin Nelson because I think he's the surest thing. But I understand why a team would take a quarterback. I personally, if I was running the Cleveland Browns, even though Rosen I have a tick higher because I think he's just a little bit more of a pro prospect, pro passing game kind of quarterback, I would take Baker Mayfield or Quentin Nelson one. Again, this is just Eric Edholm GM, not John Dorsey, not Dave Gettleman, not, Mike McCagnon. That's just who I think is the best player. If you don't need a quarterback, you take Quentin Nelson because I think he's going to be Larry Allen. I think he's going to be a Hall of Fame guard, injuries notwithstanding. And I think Baker Mayfield has the best chance to kind of go in there and just say, I'll take on all comers. Maybe he's got some shortcomings, but to me, he is just a bulldog. And I cannot wait to see him play in an NFL offense. Rosen, if you've got more of that sort of strict, kind of traditional passing game, and that's what you want to run, I would be okay with taking him too. I'm not so worried about the character concerns.
I feel like I got to get you on the show more often. You're the first guy I've talked to that agrees with me 100% on Baker Mayfield. I love the kid, and
he's great.
He's phenomenal, and I love Quentin Nelson. I think he should be the number one overall pick. Eric Edholm, Pro Football Weekly. We thank you so much for the time, and appreciate you joining us here on Press Row.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Eric Edholm, Pro Football Weekly. And listen, I've told you guys this before. I mean, I've been on the Baker Mayfield train for 2 years, and there's just something about him. The only issues you can find about someone are his off-the-field stuff, and they're very minor off-the-field issues. Like, yeah, he ran away from the cops a couple of years ago. Yeah, the crotch grab at Kansas. But you know what? That, to me, shows he's got a fire. It's Kansas. Kansas football is, like an FCS program. There's no reason to be scared of them, and he was still ready to crush that team. So that's the type of mentality I want in my quarterback, and absolutely love him. And Quentin Nelson is the most surefire Hall of Fame player in this NFL draft. Make no mistake about it. And, again, growing up as a New York Giants fan, if he's there at number 2, I don't care. You draft Quentin Nelson at number 2 with Nate Solder. You pair him, let him learn under that guy for a couple of years, if you can, at least 1 year. So it's unbelievable. But our big thanks to Eric Edholm, Pro Football Weekly, joining us here on Press Row. When we come back to the hardwood, NBA playoffs are in full swing. Keith Irizarry calling the shots with Keith Irizarry on NBC Sports Radio. He'll join us coming up in just a little bit on Press Row.
Want to be part of the show? Go to Facebook and search Press Row Podcast Public House Media, or find us on Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. You can also email the program, PressRowPHM@gmail.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimall, a Public House Media podcast.
Talk about greatness whenever they speak about me. 'Cause I'm out here grinding. I ain't splitting nothing with nobody, homie. I gotta get me. 'Cause I'm out here grinding. I ain't slipping 8 days. I can go for 8 weeks. Ain't nothing to me 'cause I am the street.
Back on Press Row, Chris Heimall here with you, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network. NBA playoffs in full swing here in the first round. Got a couple of fun games coming up here tonight. The Boston Celtics looking to extend their series lead, as well as you look at the New Orleans Pelicans as well, looking to extend their lead. Meanwhile, Sixers and Heat might be the most interesting Game 3 tonight, obviously with those two teams tied up at 1 apiece. We welcome in the host of Calling the Shots with Keith Irizarry on NBC Sports Radio, Monday through Friday from 3 to 7. You can hear him across the nation. He is Keith Irizarry, back on the program once again. Keith, thanks a lot for the time.
Hey, man, how you doing? How's everything been?
Good, brother, man. Really appreciate the time here, and NBA playoffs in full swing. I mean, you and I talked back in the summer about the excitement coming into this season surrounding, the trade possibilities, Lonzo Ball and the G League and all that fun stuff that we talked about last summer. But what are your thoughts here through the first couple of games of the first round? I mean, we've seen Golden State take over as expected, an injury-plagued Celtics team up 2-0 on Milwaukee. I mean, what have been your take so far the first few games?
I would say that the Celtics are the biggest surprise of this postseason, just because, I still picked the Celtics to win this series, mostly because I don't think Milwaukee's that good. But that being said, I didn't expect Jaylen Brown to dominate the way he is. I didn't expect Terry Rozier to wake up and be the guy that he is for the first two games and outplay pretty much that entire Milwaukee team. And I think that ultimately you got to give so much credit to Brad Stevens. I'm not usually the guy that says the coaches win games. I think you have to have the talent to win. But Brad Stevens gets these guys to buy in. He has them with the mentality of, listen, it's next man up and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it falls from the Patriot way also. But yeah, no, I mean, they're a really fun team to watch. I think the Sixers are too, and obviously the big storyline there is whether Joel Embiid plays or not, and he's really upset about not playing.
Well, they had Julian Edelman in the stands the other night for the Celtics, so maybe it is a little bit of the Patriot way. But interesting for me to hear you say that. More surprising that the Celtics are up 2-0 than the Pelicans being up 2-0?
Yes. You know why? Because the Pelicans still have one of the 2 or 3 best players in the game in Anthony Davis. And when that person is on your team, there's a chance. I also was not the biggest Portland Trailblazer proponent this year. I got some calls on my show about it. People felt like I was not giving them enough love. My honest response is it was a 2-horse race in the Western Conference with the Rockets and the Warriors, and everyone else is playing for third place. And if Jimmy Butler doesn't get hurt,
right,
Minnesota's probably the third best team in the West. If Kawhi Leonard is playing, the Spurs can be the third best team in the West. If DeMarcus Cousins doesn't get hurt, the Pelicans can be the third best team in the West. So the fact that Portland was, I mean, they're good. They are. But I'm not shocked that they're losing. I'm a little surprised they lost both games, but I'm not shocked.
As we look towards the rest of these playoffs, I mean, I go back to the opening weekend, and so many people freak out over Game 1. Bigger overreaction to you, Philadelphia after Game 1 or Cleveland after Game 1?
Cleveland, because my question to everybody is this. Do you expect the Pacers to shoot 40% from three-point land in every single game this year? If the answer is yes, then the Pacers are going to win that series. But that's not what they do all the time. Victor Oladipo, while he's an all-star, is not going to be the best player on the floor in every single game. And the Cavaliers aren't going to shoot whatever it was, 22 or 23% from three-point land in every single game. I thought that was a total overreaction. I did. I still think the Cavaliers will win that series. I picked them in 5 to go in. I might be wrong. It might be more like 6.
We're speaking with Keith Irizarry. He's the host of Calling the Shots with Keith Irizarry on NBC Sports Radio, 3 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. You can find him there. As we're looking here at the NBA playoffs, I'm a little intrigued. We talk about it's all Cavaliers and then whoever, Rockets or Warriors in the West. But has Toronto shown you anything through their first couple of games with the way they handled Washington, especially in Game 2, that makes you maybe think the Raptors have a chance in the East?
I don't want this to sound really rude, but no. I mean, this is what I expect them to do. I mean, they are one of the more talented teams in the Eastern Conference, but when all is said and done, until the Cavaliers are out, the East runs through the Cavaliers. I think that Toronto will be in the Eastern Conference Finals and they'll be in the Eastern Conference semifinals because they have to play the Cavaliers there. If they get by them, sure, they should get to the finals. But I mean, DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, they've been there before. We know what Jonas Valanciunas is. The difference this year with them is they have a real bench. Fred VanVleet's been really good. Norman Powell's been really good. They have real players coming off the bench. They didn't show me anything I don't know. I expect them to win that series.
You mentioned Joel Embiid a little bit earlier ago, and if he will play, he said he's tired of being babied. How much of an impact is he for this Philadelphia? I mean, we saw it obviously in the loss in Game 2, but how important is he both offensively and defensively?
I mean, he's huge. I mean, he's one of the best big men in the game. He's dude's 7 foot. He's a freak. He can shoot 3-pointers, all that kind of stuff. They played well without him during that 16-game regular season win streak, and I think the final 8 of that was without Joel Embiid. I caution people coming into the playoffs as well about this. If you look at that 16-game streak, now, no matter what, it's always impressive to win 16 games in a row. Mm-hmm. But of those 16 games, do you know how many playoff teams were in there? 2.
Maybe 2.
It was the Cavaliers. Yeah, it was. It was the Cavaliers and the Timberwolves, and one game against the Denver Nuggets, who was a good team. But they played the Knicks twice during that, the Nets either once or twice during that, the Hawks during that, the Hornets during that, the Magic during that. Again, 16 games, still impressive. That being said, I didn't expect them to just sweep through everything. But on the flip side, I also don't think that Dwayne Wade can turn back the clock like he did in game number 2 and get you another 28 points in 26 minutes for every game.
We're speaking with Keith Irizarry, host of Calling the Shots with Keith Irizarry on NBC Sports Radio. It's strange to me when we sit here and we talk about some of these great teams, especially, and I'm looking mainly at the 2-1 seeds, Houston and Toronto here, and because there was a conversation last week about the Rockets where if they don't do anything in the postseason, what does it really mean for Chris Paul and for James Harden based on what they've done during the regular season? Can you really discount how great some of these teams have been during the regular season if they stumble and falter in the postseason?
Well, I think that becomes like the deciding factor, right? Like if you look at the career of Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, and if you forget about Super Bowl rings, which is impossible, but if you just take away Super Bowl rings, who's the better quarterback? Probably Peyton Manning, right? Like statistically, regular season, all that kind of stuff. Kind of the same thing you can go by, like, the old school way of looking at Dan Marino and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But when you're talking about the best of the best, now I'll flip it to NBA. The Jordan LeBron conversation starts, right?
Yeah.
And if you think that they are both basically even, and I'm not saying you, Christian, I'm saying like in general, like if you think they're basically even, you have to find a deciding factor, and then it becomes the wins. So when you're looking at James Harden, who's probably going to be MVP, and you look at Chris Paul, who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer someday, and both of them have always had problems in the postseason, those are deciding factors. And yes, I do think it puts a blemish on them and even what they do in the regular season. Yes, I do.
As we look here, you got obviously a bunch of teams playing for a championship, 16 teams playing, but you've got 3 teams that have already looked towards the future, the Charlotte Hornets, New York Knicks, and Orlando Magic with coaching vacancies. I want to touch on the Knicks because it feels like we can't talk the NBA without having some Knicks front office issues. I thought it was so strange. The other day, I don't remember what I was watching, but the name Mike Woodson popped up as a possible candidate for the Knicks. Could they really be thinking about rehiring him?
So from what I've been hearing, yes, they are. They've added him to like the search. They're probably going to bring him in for an interview. He wasn't as bad as we all want to believe. Think about it. They had a winning season, I think, what was that, 2012-13 season when they won 54 games and went into the postseason. And it was never an issue of him losing the team. It was upper management wanted to make a different move when they got rid of him. He is extremely well respected in the NBA. I don't love the David Blatt mention. I'm not a fan. Even though actually we've had him on the show, he's a good guy, smart mind. I don't love him in the NBA. David Fizdale is the hot name. Mark Jackson is an interesting one because I've heard some inner rumblings that when he was in Golden State, he didn't deal well with upper management, so that could be an issue. And I had Antoine Walker on my show yesterday, the day before, whatever it was. We talked about Jerry Stackhouse, and Antoine Walker told me he would love to see Stackhouse get one of these jobs because he's tired of seeing all the retreads, get some new people in there, and Stackhouse has done it the right way. He retired. He went into, like, assistant coaching and went every step you would need. He would love to see Stackhouse get one of the jobs.
It's pretty interesting. I mean, there are only 9 coaches, as I'm looking here, there's only 9 coaches with more than 5 years of experience, actually, as a head coach. So, I mean, what's your take on that? Do you want a guy who's had a lot of experience, or do you want to be maybe that guy who's worked his way up, been an assistant coach, he's done the scouting stuff, and he's got that maybe fresh taste, fresh thought?
I think that the players nowadays will answer better to the younger coaches. I mean, even in Cleveland, think about it. It's got to be so hard to coach LeBron James. Like, It's great to have him on your team, but I'd imagine it's very difficult to be his coach. And Ty Lue handled it as well as you probably could imagine. Brad Stevens looks like he's 14 years old and has come in, and everyone on that Boston team is willing to listen to him. You know, you had Eric Spoelstra when he took over in Miami, taking over again with LeBron and Wade and Bosh and Ray Allen and those guys. Tough situation, but for some reason they all seem to listen to him. I think that there's something to be said about the Popoviches of the world, that people will listen because they've done it for 25 years. But then there's also something to be said about the, 40-something-year-old guy that's not that far removed from maybe playing this game, knows the nuances of the new style of the game. It's not, thinking about like the 1980s and 90s when you could just beat up people on the floor and adjusting to the fact that like nowadays it's fast paced, shoot a 3-pointer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an interesting part about the conversation that we have here now is it's the off season for, 14 other teams in the NBA. So as we get set here, Keith Irizarry, host of Calling the Shots with Keith Irizarry on NBC Sports Radio. Check him out Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Last thing I'm going to leave you with here, Keith, most surprising result that we may get here in this first round.
Oh, man, most surprising result we'll get in the first round is, wow, that's a good one. I don't see any crazy surprises. All right, I guess the most surprising result, some people may say New Orleans winning the series against the Trailblazers. They could sweep them, man. Going back to New Orleans, they could definitely sweep that series. I'll go there. I'll say that's the most surprising result, yeah.
Looking forward to it. Love watching Anthony Davis, and he obviously made a run at it for MVP here. But, as you mentioned, you think it'll be James Harden. So, Keith, I appreciate the time, my man. Thanks a lot so much, and best of luck with the show. Appreciate it.
No doubt, man. Thanks a lot, bro.
All right, Keith Irizarry here on Press Row talking NBA playoffs. And, I don't consider New Orleans to be that much of an upset. I mean, he's absolutely right. When you look at the Western Conference, 3 through 8 were separated by, 2 games? So, and if Boogie Cousins is healthy the entire year, I don't know if New Orleans is the third. They might be the second best team in the West if Boogie Cousins is healthy. Same with if Jimmy Butler was healthy all year for Minnesota, or if Kawhi Leonard actually played for San Antonio. So I wouldn't consider it an upset. I think the most surprising thing that you could see here in this first round, you could see the Pacers push Cleveland to 7 games. That, I think, would be the most surprising thing. Obviously, if they won, that'd be a huge shocker to have LeBron go out in the first round since he's never lost a first-round matchup in his career. But still a lot to be decided in the world of the NBA. We appreciate Keith's time here. When we return, we're going to have your listener questions. As always, we appreciate you guys being a part of the show, and we can't wait to talk about all the things that you're wondering about coming up next on Press Row.
Listen to every episode and get the latest shows sent right to you. Subscribe to Press Row on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and Stitcher.com. Or visit us online at www.thephmedia.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimall, a Public House Media podcast.
Welcome back on Press Row. Get to your guys' listener questions here in just a moment. Big thanks to Eric Edholm, Pro Football Weekly, as well as Keith Irizarry of Calling the Shots with Keith Irizarry on NBC Sports Radio for joining us here this week. As always, you can get in touch with the show on social media. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. Email the show, PressRowPHM@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook. You can do that as well. It's Press Row by Public House Media. You can find me on Twitter if you really want. at Chris Heimall, ChrisHeimall. Lot to get to here, a number of questions from you guys. First one we're going to go to here is Joseph in California. Shohei Ohtani, just 2 innings against the Red Sox in a big loss on Tuesday. Did we overhype the Japanese sensation? No, because this is his 3rd career start. They said he left with blisters. Whether you believe that or not is up to you. 2 innings pitched. He gives up, let's see here, 2 innings pitched. I'm looking at the box score. Excuse me. 2 innings pitched and gives up 3 runs, 1 strikeout, 2 walks. Nothing exciting for him. 4 hits, including a home run to Mookie Betts, the leadoff batter. But, I mean, when you look at it, more than anything else for Ohtani, you're going to have games like this. Even Clayton Kershaw gets shelled. Justin Verlander, Chris Sale, pick who you want. Andy Pettitte, Roger Clemens, Randy Johnson, Nolan Ryan. They've all gotten shelled at points in their career. The question is more, how do you bounce back from it? Now, I thought it was a smart move by Mike Scioscia to pull Ohtani after 2 innings. You don't want him to have his confidence rally. You don't want him to try to start changing things and just wasting pitches. I mean, through 2 innings, I think he threw 66 pitches. That's a lot of pitches for a 5-inning game. That's what you want to do. But he did that in 2 innings. So I don't find it to be an overreaction at all or an overhype of Shohei Ohtani. He's still incredible. He can still play the game on both ends as a pitcher and as a hitter. So I don't think we overhyped him at all. I just think this was his first real rough start. I mean, when you start off with your first 2 games as a pitcher, and they're sandwiched between 3 straight games with a home run, and one of them, by the way, is a no-hitter into the 7th inning, you're going to have a disappointment the very first time out you get shelled like this. So I wouldn't be surprised. It's not that terrible. I mean, when you think about it, his ERA only goes up to 3.6. Oh, no. That's generally average in Major League Baseball, if not a little bit over. But this is his 3rd career start. Every now and again, you just don't have your best stuff, and he didn't have it in that game. Plus, you're talking about a Red Sox team, by the way, that is the best in baseball in terms of runs scored, runs produced, and one of the best in terms of record right now. I mean, they're unbelievable in terms of what they have been doing, and so were the Angels, but they just ran into a better team here this week. So, and it doesn't help when you're going up against David Price. This was the first time that Ohtani really faced a strong team. I mean, no disrespect to the other 2 teams that he faced, the other team that he faced in Oakland twice, by the way. I mean, it's not that surprising. So, tough outing for him, yes, but the biggest key here is how does he return? How does he bounce back from this one? All right, let's see. What else do we have here? Michael in Illinois. 25 games have been postponed in Major League Baseball so far this year. We're only 3 weeks in. Should they consider shortening the season? 100%. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there have been, it's 25 games or something like that. Yeah, I think 25 games that have been postponed due to weather. And this was the first time the earliest the season ever started on March 29th when he had every team playing. And a lot of this has been in the Midwest. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen this, but this is something that is going to be a issue coming for a very long time, or excuse me, I should say over the next couple of years. There's a study that's been done that is actually showing that there are severe weather season shifts coming in the Midwest. This was done a year ago, and if you check it out, climatechange.lta.org is actually where this is done. And they're showing that there has been a shift in seasons over the last couple decades. Spring is getting here earlier, even though not this year. Winters are shorter and freezing days declining. The problem is that some of these in the Midwest, however, where Chicago, Milwaukee, Minnesota, a lot of these games have been postponed, is the fact that there's going to be almost like a second winter. More than anything else, late into winter and early into spring is where this is going to happen. So Major League Baseball should shorten it, whether it's to 154 or 148. I'd love to see it go down to 148 games. I think that'd be incredible. You take away a couple of these interleague matchups that mean nothing. You could do away with probably 2 games against your division rival. I mean, as much as I love Red Sox Yankees, I don't need to watch it 19 times and then again 7 more times in the playoffs. So I wouldn't be upset at all to see them shorten it. The biggest issue you're going to have, and Anthony Rizzo, the Cubs first baseman, even said he was okay with it too. If you cut out some games, you're going to lose potential revenue, and the players are going to have to take a pay cut as a result of that. Sponsors are also going to want to pay less. The TV rights are going to cost less because there's less games to actually show. However, when you're an owner and when you're thinking about things like this and you're a GM, how much money do you lose just by opening up the ballpark, like the Cubs did or the White Sox did when they were playing to maybe 600 people a couple of weeks ago? The Mets, the Yankees, even though they've got, draw there, they've got, talented teams, they're not going to be selling out their ballpark in March and early April like they could in late April and early May and August and stuff like that. So I do think that shortening the season would be great. I would love to see it go down to 148 games. Maybe extend spring training because, again, if you extend spring training a little bit, you get guys who maybe are injured in the offseason a chance to rehab a little bit more. You get guys to be in better swing of things. That way the offense is maybe better. Maybe the pitching's better as well. You make the game better if you shorten it and there isn't as much stress. Now, I know they added days to the season, quote-unquote. They went from 183 games in 2015 to 187 now, so they built in 4 extra days in there. But when you have all these games getting postponed, you're using up those extra rest days. So it would behoove Major League Baseball, I really do believe this, to shorten to 148 games at the most. If you want to go to 154 with a plan of going down to 148, go for it. But I do think this is kind of the most important part of baseball, and that is the games are too long, the season is too long. You can control 100% how long the season is. You cannot control how long the games actually go. You might as well work with what you can control. And that's what I think Major League Baseball needs to do, is to shorten the season by, in my opinion, at least 8, maybe 14 games. That would probably be the right way to go, if you ask me. As always, we appreciate you guys and checking us out on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram as well, Press Row by Public House Media. You can also check out us on Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. Email us your questions, pressrowphm@gmail.com. If you don't want to wait for the show to ask any questions, send us a tweet anyway. Put us up on Instagram, Facebook. Find me on Twitter as well, at Chris Heimall, ChrisHeimall. We got a lot to talk about next week. It's the NFL Draft. Really pumped for that. Going to be a lot of fun to check out what goes down there. You heard Eric Edholm of Pro Football Weekly. We thank him so much for his time on how things may shake out in that top 10, at least in that first round next Thursday night. We're going to break it all down a little bit more next week as well. Big thanks to Keith Irizarry of Calling the Shots with Keith Irizarry on NBC Sports Radio. You can check him out Monday through Friday from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time across the country, over 400 radio affiliates on NBC Sports Radio. Big thanks to him and Eric as well. Big thanks to you guys, of course, for supporting us. Check us out, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, Stitcher.com, iHeartRadio, and, of course, thephmedia.com, where you can get some great Press Row gear and support the podcast. I'm Christian Heimall, guys. We'll see you next week on Press Row.